Life is full of crossroads. Every day we wake up with decisions to make, some small, some life-altering. We rush into choices, chase opportunities, and sometimes when things don't go as planned, we pause and wonder, did I do the right thing? We scramble to fix things, seek advice from everyone around us, and only when all else fails do we remember to turn to the one who holds the answers. But what if we changed that? What if, instead of making prayer our last resort, we made it our first instinct? There is a power that moves when we begin with prayer. It is not just about asking for things, it's about aligning our hearts, quieting the noise, and seeking guidance beyond what our human minds can comprehend. So often we operate in our own strength, thinking we have it all figured out, but there are forces at work, unseen battles being fought, and wisdom beyond our understanding that we have access to, if only we ask. We live in a world that glorifies action, move fast, make decisions, get things done. We are wired to believe that success comes from constant motion, from figuring it all out as quickly as possible. But have you ever noticed that the most important moments in life, the ones that truly shape who we are, don't come from rushing? They come from pausing, from reflecting, from listening. There is something powerful about stopping before we start, about making room for stillness before we make a move, and yet so often we do the opposite. We throw ourselves into situations, make choices based on gut feelings, emotions, or pressure, and only when things start falling apart do we remember to pray. We treat faith like an emergency exit instead of the foundation on which we build. But what if we flipped that? What if, instead of making prayer our last option, we made it our first instinct? Imagine waking up and before grabbing your phone, before checking your schedule, before letting the weight of the world hit you, you take a breath and pray. Not just a rushed request for things to go your way, but a deep surrender, a moment to seek wisdom beyond your own understanding. That shift changes everything. It creates space for peace before anxiety takes over. It grounds you in something steadier than emotions, opinions, or expectations. It reminds you that you are not alone in your decisions, that you don't have to have all the answers, that you don't have to carry the weight of the unknown by yourself. Think about the difference between running into a storm without preparation versus walking into it knowing exactly where to step. That's what prayer does. It doesn't necessarily remove the storms, but it equips you with clarity and strength to navigate them. It changes the way you respond to life's uncertainties because you are no longer moving out of fear, but out of faith. The world will always push you to act first and think later, to rush, to react, to figure things out on your own. But wisdom says, pause before you make that decision, before you let anxiety take the lead, before you step forward without direction. Stop and pray. Because when you do, you are not just asking for help, you are stepping into alignment with something far greater than yourself. And that kind of foundation, that kind of strength, it changes everything. Life moves fast. We wake up, check our phones, dive into schedules, chase deadlines, and before we know it, the day is gone. Somewhere in the rush, our hearts get cluttered with noise, expectations, worries, pressures, and endless to-do lists. We make decisions on autopilot, react to situations as they come, and try to keep everything together. But beneath the surface, there's often a disconnect, a sense of, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? Prayer isn't about stopping life. It's about realigning with what truly matters. It's about taking a step back, quieting the noise, and reconnecting with something bigger than ourselves. It's the moment where we stop chasing answers and start listening for them. In a world that tells us to push forward at all costs, prayer reminds us that sometimes the wisest thing we can do is pause. Imagine trying to drive in thick fog, barely able to see a few feet ahead. That's what life feels like when we move without alignment. We make decisions based on fear, impulse, or pressure rather than clarity and wisdom. But when we pray, it's like the fog starts to lift. It doesn't mean we suddenly have all the answers, but it means we're no longer wandering blindly. We're connected to a deeper truth, one that sees beyond the moment, beyond the fear, beyond the uncertainty. Prayer doesn't require perfect words or rituals. It's not about getting it right. It's about showing up. It's about saying, I don't have all the answers, but I know where to turn for them. It's about surrendering control, not as a sign of weakness, but as a declaration of trust. And when we do that, when we start with prayer instead of making it a last resort, something shifts. The weight on our shoulders feels lighter. The choices before us feel clearer. The chaos inside us begins to settle. The world will tell you to seek validation from others, to make decisions based on logic alone, to figure it all out on your own. But wisdom says start with prayer, because when your heart and mind are aligned with the one who created you, you don't just move, you move with purpose. You don't just react, you respond with wisdom. And you don't just survive, you thrive. Life has a way of making us believe we have to carry everything on our own. We wake up with responsibilities, expectations, and pressures that sit heavy on our shoulders. We tell ourselves, I have to figure this out. I have to be strong. I have to keep it together. And so we push through even when we're exhausted, even when we're unsure, even when we feel like we're on the edge of breaking. But here's the truth. You were never meant to carry it all alone. There is a strength beyond your own, a wisdom greater than your own understanding, and a love that meets you exactly where you are. Yet, so often we treat prayer like a backup plan instead of our first response. We hold on so tightly, trying to control every outcome instead of opening our hands and surrendering what was never ours to hold in the first place. Imagine a child trying to lift something far too heavy, struggling, straining, refusing to ask for help, when all along a loving hand was right there, ready to carry the burden. That's how we often live. We exhaust ourselves fighting battles we were never meant to fight alone. But the moment we stop, take a deep breath, and pray first, something changes. We are no longer operating in our own limited strength. We are no longer running on empty. We are no longer trying to do life alone. Prayer is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate act of courage. It is saying, I don't have all the answers, but I trust the one who does. It is choosing peace over panic, faith over fear, and surrender over striving. It is releasing the need to control and instead embracing the security of knowing you are held. You don't have to wait until you're overwhelmed, broken, or desperate to pray. Start now, in the small moments, in the big decisions, in the everyday chaos of life. Because when you pray first, you are no longer just surviving, you are walking with the assurance that you are never alone, and that changes everything. There is a deep longing inside every one of us to know that we are on the right path, that the choices we make will lead to something meaningful. We crave direction, but too often we search for it in all the wrong places. We scroll through endless opinions, ask for advice from people who are just as uncertain as we are, and rely on logic alone to navigate a life that is anything but predictable. We think if we just work harder, plan better, or control more, we'll find clarity, but instead we often find ourselves more confused, more anxious, more overwhelmed. Real guidance doesn't come from chasing answers. It comes from seeking the one who already knows them. Prayer isn't just about asking for help. It's about aligning our hearts with something greater than ourselves. It's about stepping out of the chaos and into a space of stillness where wisdom speaks in ways we can't always explain, but can always feel. When we pray, we are not just throwing words into the air. We are tuning in to a voice that sees what we cannot, that knows what's ahead when all we see is the next step. Think about the moments in your life when you felt lost, when you stood at a crossroads, unsure of which way to go. Maybe you made a decision based on pressure or fear, only to realize later that it led you further from where you truly wanted to be. Now imagine if, instead of rushing forward in uncertainty, you had paused, if you had prayed first, if you had sought wisdom before taking action. How different might things have been? Seeking his face isn't about getting immediate answers or having everything go our way. It's about trust. It's about saying, I don't need to see the whole picture to take the next step, as long as I know who's guiding me. It's about releasing the need to control every detail and embracing the peace that comes from knowing you are being led by something bigger than your fears. You don't have to figure it all out alone. You don't have to search endlessly for direction in places that will never satisfy. You only have to seek, to turn your heart toward the one who already knows the way. And when you do, when you pray first and seek with an open heart, you will find that the answers, the clarity, and the direction you've been searching for were never missing. They were just waiting for you to stop and listen. There's something about uncertainty that makes the human heart restless. The unknown stretches before us like a road covered in fog, and no matter how much we plan, prepare, or try to predict the future, we can never quite control what's ahead. So we do what we've been taught. We worry, we overthink, we run through every possible outcome in our minds, convincing ourselves that if we just analyze it enough, we can somehow protect ourselves from disappointment, failure, or pain. But the truth is, worry doesn't prepare us, it only drains us. There is a better way, a way that doesn't demand we have all the answers before we take a step, a way that trades anxiety for peace, control for trust, and fear for faith. And it starts with prayer. When we pray first, before we let fear take the lead, something shifts inside of us. Prayer doesn't always change the situation immediately, but it changes us. It reminds us that we don't walk alone, that we don't have to figure it all out by ourselves. It realigns our hearts with truth instead of fear, with wisdom instead of worry. Because here's the thing, peace isn't found in certainty, it's found in trust. It's found in knowing that even when we can't see the full picture, we are being guided by the one who can. Think about the moments in your life when you felt overwhelmed by doubt, when you lay awake at night playing out worst-case scenarios. Did worrying ever bring you peace? Did it ever give you real answers? Or did it only leave you more exhausted, more anxious, more unsure? Now imagine what would happen if, instead of letting fear write the story, you began with prayer. If you paused before the panic, before the spiral of what ifs, and simply said, lead me, show me the way, give me peace before I take another step. That kind of surrender doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. Because the world will always give you reasons to be afraid. Life will always present you with uncertainty. But when you build a habit of seeking divine guidance before anything else, you develop a kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a peace that isn't shaken by change or broken by fear. So before you let anxiety steal another moment, before you let worry weigh you down, stop, breathe, pray first, because peace isn't found in knowing all the answers, it's found in knowing where to turn for them. Fear has a way of creeping in when we least expect it. It disguises itself as overthinking, as hesitation, as the need to have every detail figured out before we take the next step. It whispers doubts into our minds, making us question whether we're capable, whether we're worthy, whether we're making the right choices. And if we're not careful, fear starts calling the shots. It keeps us stuck in indecision, afraid to move forward, but too restless to stay where we are. But here's the truth. Decisions made in fear rarely lead us to where we want to be. When fear is in control, we play it safe, even when we're meant to be bold. We shrink back when we should stand firm. We make choices based on what feels comfortable rather than what is right. And in the process, we trade faith for control, not realizing that real strength doesn't come from knowing all the answers. It comes from trusting the one who does. Prayer shifts that perspective. When we pray first, we're no longer reacting out of fear, but responding with faith. We step away from the need to control every outcome and into the assurance that we are being led by something greater than our uncertainty. Prayer doesn't remove every challenge, but it gives us the wisdom to navigate them. It doesn't eliminate every fear, but it reminds us that fear doesn't get the final say. Think about the moments in your life when fear almost held you back. Maybe you were on the verge of stepping into something new, something unknown, but doubt made you hesitate. Maybe you convinced yourself that if you just had one more sign, one more confirmation, then you'd be ready. But deep down, was it really about needing more answers? Or was it about needing the courage to move forward despite the unknown? That kind of courage doesn't come from us alone. It comes from seeking divine wisdom before we take another step. It comes from praying first before fear has a chance to take over. It comes from trusting that we don't have to see the entire path to take the next step as long as we know who's guiding us. So before you let fear talk you out of what you were meant to do, before you make another decision from a place of anxiety, stop, breathe, pray. Because when you move in faith instead of fear, you don't just make decisions, you make the right decisions. And that changes everything. Life has a way of surprising us. Some moments lift us higher than we ever imagined, while others knock the wind out of us when we least expect it. And in those difficult seasons, it's easy to wonder, where's the guidance? Where's the help? Why does it feel like I'm walking through this alone? But if we take a moment to look back, if we truly reflect on the times we thought we wouldn't make it through, we start to see a pattern. How many times have you been in a place where you thought there was no way forward, only to find a door open when you least expected it? How often have you felt lost, only to realize later that the struggle led you exactly where you needed to be? We don't always recognize the guidance while we're in the storm, but when we look back, we see it. The moments of protection, the redirections, the quiet reassurances that kept us going even when we didn't understand. That's why seeking divine wisdom is so important. Because life is not just a series of random events. There is a hand guiding us, a plan unfolding, even when we can't see it. But too often we forget. We treat the past like it was luck instead of divine intervention. We move on from challenges without stopping to acknowledge who carried us through. And then when we face a new difficulty, we panic as if we've never been held before. But what if we changed that? What if instead of waiting until we were desperate, we started with prayer? What if instead of worrying about whether we'll make it through, we remembered all the times we already have? What if before we let doubt take over, we reminded ourselves of the ways we have been provided for, protected, and led in ways we didn't even recognize at the time? That kind of awareness changes the way we face life. It reminds us that we are never as alone as we feel. It shifts our perspective from fear to trust, from uncertainty to confidence, and most of all, it strengthens our faith. Not just in the moments when we need help, but in the everyday, ordinary moments when we simply need to remember who is walking beside us. So before you let worry convince you that you're on your own, look back. Look at the moments when grace carried you, even when you didn't know it. Let that be the proof that you are not forgotten, not abandoned, not left to figure it all out on your own. Seek wisdom first. Pray first. Pray, because when you do, you won't just move forward. You'll move forward with confidence, knowing that the same hand that has carried you this far will never let you go. There is a battle that happens within all of us. The battle between our need to be in control and our deep desire to trust. We want to believe that things will work out, that there is a plan, that we are not alone in this life. But at the same time, we grip so tightly to our own understanding, to our own plans, to the belief that if we just work harder, think faster, or push stronger, we can force everything to fall into place. But life doesn't work that way. No matter how much we try to control the outcome, there will always be things beyond our grasp. Unexpected circumstances, unanswered questions, seasons of waiting that stretch us in ways we never wanted to be stretched. And in those moments, we have a choice. We can either exhaust ourselves trying to hold everything together, or we can surrender, not in defeat, but in faith. Seeking divine wisdom before anything else is not about giving up, it's about giving over. It's about recognizing that real strength isn't found in doing everything alone. It's found in trusting the one who already knows the way. It's about loosening our grip on the illusion of control and opening our hands to receive something far greater than we could create on our own. Think about the weight you've been carrying, the decisions that keep you up at night, the uncertainty that lingers in the back of your mind, the fear of what happens if things don't go the way you planned. Now imagine what it would feel like to set that weight down, to release the need to figure it all out, to shift from forcing to trusting. That's what happens when we pray first. It doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy or that we get every answer immediately, but it means we stop striving in our own strength. We stop making choices out of fear and start moving in faith. We stop relying on our limited perspective and start leaning into wisdom far greater than our own. So before you let the weight of the unknown overwhelm you, pause. Before you try to control every outcome, breathe. Before you take another step, pray. Because true freedom isn't found in having all the answers. It's found in knowing you don't have to. And when you let go of control and seek divine wisdom first, you will find that what's ahead is not just uncertain, it's guided. And that changes everything. There is something powerful about stillness. In a world that glorifies busyness, where every moment is filled with noise, distraction, and the pressure to keep moving, stillness can feel unnatural, almost uncomfortable. We've been taught that action is the answer to everything, that if we're not constantly doing, we're falling behind. But in that constant movement, we often miss the very thing we need the most: clarity. Clarity doesn't come from running faster. It doesn't come from overthinking every possible outcome. It comes from seeking. It comes from the quiet space where we stop striving long enough to listen. Because here's the truth: life will always demand our attention, but wisdom requires our intention. And when we take the time to seek, to pray, to align our hearts with something greater than ourselves, we move through life with a different kind of confidence. Not the confidence that comes from having everything figured out, but the confidence that comes from knowing we are being led. How many times have you rushed into a decision only to regret it later? How often have you let stress and urgency push you into choices that didn't align with who you truly are? That's what happens when we move without seeking. When we act without first anchoring ourselves in wisdom, we let emotions, fear, and outside pressures dictate our path. But when we begin with prayer, when we seek first instead of as a last resort, we set ourselves on a foundation that cannot be shaken. This isn't about perfection. It's not about getting everything right. It's about trust. It's about saying, before I let the world tell me who I should be, I will seek the one who already knows who I am. Before I let fear make my decisions, I will turn to the source of true peace. Before I move forward blindly, I will stop and ask for guidance. And that changes everything. Because when you seek first, you don't just make better choices, you make aligned choices. You don't just react to life, you move with purpose. You don't just hope things will work out. You walk forward, knowing that no matter what comes next, you are being led by wisdom greater than your own. And that kind of life, that's not just surviving, that's thriving. Life will always give us reasons to rush. There will always be pressures pulling us in different directions, voices telling us what we should do, distractions that make us forget what truly matters. The world will try to convince us that we have to figure it all out on our own, that we have to carry the weight of our choices, our struggles, and our future without any help. But that was never the way we were meant to live. Strength is not found in controlling everything. It is found in knowing where to turn when we don't have the answers. Peace is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the presence of trust, even in the midst of it. Wisdom is not about having everything planned out. It is about seeking before striving, listening before reacting, and surrendering before worrying. Imagine how different life could be if, instead of running on empty, we started every decision, every challenge, every unknown moment by first turning to the one who already knows the way. Imagine walking into every situation with the quiet confidence that you are not alone, that you are guided, that you don't have to force your way through life because there is already a path being made for you. That kind of life starts with a choice to pause before the panic, a choice to pray before making a move, a choice to seek wisdom before relying on your own understanding. And when that becomes the way you live, you will notice a shift. You will stop feeling like you are constantly grasping for control and start feeling held. You will stop moving from a place of fear and start stepping forward with faith. You will stop questioning whether you are alone in your struggles and start recognizing that every step, even the hardest ones, are leading you towards something greater. So no matter where you are today, whether you are standing at a crossroads, carrying the weight of uncertainty, or just trying to make it through the next moment, know this: you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. All you have to do is seek. Seek first, pray first, and trust that when you do, you will not only find clarity, you will find the strength, the wisdom, and the peace that have been waiting for you all along.